Hey everyone, Lauren Perreault here with your Portland Metro Market Update for the week of July 21st, 2026. If you're thinking about buying or selling anywhere in the Portland Metro area, this is your weekly dose of straight numbers, no spin, so you can make decisions with real information instead of guesswork. Let's start with supply because inventory sets the stage for everything else we're going to talk about today. Active listings climbed to 8,375 homes this week, up from 8,328 the week before. Now on the surface, that looks like inventory is slightly growing, and it is week over week, but compare that to the same week last year when we had 8,625 active listings, and you'll see we're actually down 2.9% year over year. So even though the raw number keeps climbing through the summer, we have fewer homes on the market right now than we did at this exact point in 2025. The 12-week rolling average tells a similar story. Right now, that average sits at 7,793 homes compared to 7,901 during the same 12-week stretch last year. That's a meaningful gap, and it tells me supply has been a little more restrained this year than it was last summer. New listings came in at 708 this week. That's a pullback from 800 the week before, but last week was probably still affected by people coming on the market after the 4th of July holiday. But it's still 3.5% ahead of the 684 new listings we saw during the same week last year. Sellers are continuing to test the market at a pretty steady clip. The 12-week average of 736 new listings per week shows that pace has been holding fairly consistent all summer long. So what does this mean if you're thinking about selling? Inventory isn't flooding the market, but it's also not scarce. That's actually a healthy middle ground. It's a balanced market. It means buyers have real choices, but it also means your home isn't going to get lost in an overwhelming sea of competition. Pricing and presentation still matter enormously, which is exactly what we're going to see play out when we get to days on market in a few minutes. Now let's flip over to the demand side of the equation because this is where things got genuinely interesting this week. Homes sold reached 547, up nicely from 515 the week before, and 1.9% higher than the 537 homes sold during the same week last year. The 12-week rolling average for homes sold now stands at 572, well ahead of last year's 531 over that same stretch. That gap between this year and last year on a 12-week basis is one of the more important numbers in this entire report. It tells us buyer activity has been consistently stronger this summer than it was a year ago, even with mortgage rates sitting right where they are. That's not a small thing. It means demand is not waiting around anymore for rates to drop before people make decisions. Total pending sales held close to flat at 3,159, just a touch above the 3,148 we saw last week. But new pending sales, this is the number that jumped, went to 700 from just 537 the week before. That's a 5.1% increase over the 666 new pending sales from the same week last year. I like to think of these three demand numbers as a pipeline. New pending sales show you what's entering contract this week. Total pending sales shows you the overall backlog working its way towards closing. And homes sold shows you what actually crossed the finish line. When all three of those are moving in a positive direction at the same time, like they are this week, that tells me demand isn't just holding steady, it's actually building. Heading into the back half of summer, that's a notable shift because this is usually a period where buyer fatigue can start to creep in after months of searching. It's also worth pointing out that this kind of pipeline strength usually shows up in the numbers before it shows up in anecdotes from the field. In other words, by the time everyone is talking about how busy the market feels, the data has usually already been telling that story for a few weeks. That's part of why I like walking through these numbers with you every single week instead of just reacting to whatever the mood on the street happens to be. The pipeline right now is telling us buyers are engaged, they're writing offers, and those offers are converting into closed sales at a healthy clip. Let's talk pricing because this is the section everybody wants to hear about, and it's also the section where a single week's numbers can be the most misleading if you don't look at the bigger picture alongside them. Average sale price landed at $636,274 this week, down from $665,005 the prior week, but essentially flat year over year, just 0.4% above the $633,933 average from the same week last year. Median sale price came in at $559,990, down from $585,000 the week before, and 2% below the $571,000 $16,500 median from a year ago. Now, before anyone panics about those week-over-week drops, I want to explain why this happens. Weekly numbers like average and median sale price bounce around based on which price bands happen to close escrow that particular week. If a cluster of higher-priced homes closed last week and a cluster of more moderately priced homes closed this week, you'll see a swing, and it has nothing to do with the market actually losing value. That's exactly why the 12-week rolling average matters so much more than any single week. On that basis, average sale price sits at $649,724 compared to $638,774 during the same period last year, which works out to a gain of roughly 1.7%. Median sale price on a 12-week basis is essentially flat at $576,585 compared to $578,072 last year. I also want to explain quickly why we track both average and median, because they tell slightly different stories. Average sale price can get pulled upward by a handful of higher-end closings in any given week. Median sale price is less sensitive to those outliers and tends to be the more reliable read on what a typical Portland Metro buyer is actually paying. When both of those measures point in a similar direction over a 12-week window, like they do right now, that gives us real confidence the underlying pricing environment is genuinely stable. So let's talk about price reductions and days on market. This next section is where the real story of this market lives, so pay close attention. Price reductions over the past 7 days totaled 979, down from 1,138 the prior week, and 6.5% below the 1,047 reductions recorded during the same week last year. Of those, 513 were reductions of $15,000 or more, which tells me we're seeing fewer but more decisive corrections rather than a bunch of small incremental trims. The 12-week rolling average for total price reductions now sits at 834 compared to 916 during the same period last year, which is an 8.9% decline. Fewer reductions relative to a year ago is a meaningful signal. It tells me more sellers are pricing accurately from the very beginning this year, rather than listing aspirationally high and cutting later once the market tells them, no way. Now, let's talk days on the market, because this is where that pricing discipline really shows up. Average days on market came in at 53 days this week, unchanged from the prior week, but 10.4% higher than the 48 days recorded during the same week last year. Median days on market held steady at 22 days, exactly matching last year's number. That 31-day gap between the average and median days on market is the single most important number in this whole report, and here's why. Median days on market tells you how fast a well-priced, well-presented home actually moves. Average days on market gets pulled way up by the homes that linger, whether that's because of price, condition, or location. When that gap widens, it almost always means the market is rewarding accurate pricing more than ever, while punishing homes that were priced ahead of where buyers are actually willing to go. Buyers really know what's going on because of all the big portals like Zillow and Realtor.com. They see the data just as much as we do. On a 12-week rolling basis, average days on market sits at 56.3 days versus 46.5 days last year, while median days on market is up slightly to 17.5 days from 16.1. Not huge. So the overall market has slowed somewhat compared to last summer, but the homes that are priced right are still moving at almost exactly the same pace they always have. If you're selling, that's your blueprint. Price it accurately from day one, and you're playing in the 22-day median, not the 53-day average. Sale to list and rates. Let's close out with that, because both of these tie everything together, and both of them directly affect what your strategy should look right now. Average sale price as a percentage of asking price came in at 99.45% this week, up slightly from 99.17% during the same week last year. Median sale price as a percentage of asking hit 101.36%, meaningful ahead of last year's 99.57%, which means more than half of the homes that sold this week closed at or above their asking price. That's a strong number, and it reinforces everything we just talked about. With days on market, priced right homes are not just selling fast, they're selling at or above what sellers are asking for them. Average sale price is a percentage of original asking price, which captures the whole journey from initial list price all the way through to final sale, including any reductions along the way, came in at 97.97%. up from 96.6% a year ago. Since this metric only started tracking back in January of 2026, we don't have same week last year comparisons for the 12-week rolling average just yet, but the trend so far points towards sellers losing less ground between their original list price and final sale price than they did last year. Now, let's talk about rates. The 30-year fixed rate through On Point Community Credit Union, which if you've been watching this all along, you know they tend to have the best rates in Portland, moved up to 6.5% this week, up from 6.375% the week before. Points held steady at 0.375, and APR ticked up to 6.594% from 6.468%. The 12-week rolling average for the rate now sits at 6.32%. Rate tracking for this particular series began back in February of 2026, so again, we don't have year-over-year comparisons yet, but within the window we do have, rates have moved in a fairly narrow band, roughly between 5.6 and 6.5%. Here's what I want you to take away from this week's numbers. Rates ticked up, and demand did not slow down. Homes sold and new pending sales both moved higher this week, even with that rate increase. And that tells me motivated buyers are finding ways to make the numbers work rather than waiting on the sidelines for a perfect moment that may not come. If you're selling, price it accurately from the start. The data could not be clearer that homes priced right are selling in around 22 days, often at or above asking. That single decision, getting the price right on day one, is doing more work for sellers right now than any other lever available to them. Staging matters, marketing matters, but pricing strategy is still the #1 factor separating the homes that sell in 3 weeks from the ones still sitting there 2 months later. If you're buying, strong demand paired with disciplined seller pricing usually means good opportunities do not sit around for long. So hesitation can definitely cost you the home you want. I know rates ticking up can feel discouraging, but remember, you can always refinance a rate down the road if the environment shifts. You can't go back in time and buy the house that got away because you waited 1 more week to make a decision. And don't forget, if you wait till next year, the homes are going to cost even more. So even if the rate's a little better, your overall payment, etc., is probably going to be pretty close to what it is right now. Why don't you get the house you really want now? So that's your Portland Metro Market update for the week of July 21st, 2026. If you find this helpful, make sure you subscribe so you catch next week's numbers the moment they drop, and drop a comment below if there's a specific metric or neighborhood trend you'd like me to dig into in a future video. And if you're ready to talk strategy, whether you're buying, selling, or just trying to understand what your home is worth in today's conditions, call or text me at 503-683-1885 or head to pdxhomesforsale.com. I pride myself on having exceptional strategy and delivering extraordinary results. I'll see you next week.